All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. I think we have everyone here with us. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be with us here at Fractured Atlas. Again, you are part of the Introduction to Fundraising Individual Donors webinar with myself, Aisha Jordan, Program Associate at Fractured Atlas. And through this, we're going to do a little basic review of just what getting fundraising from individual donors is, what it looks like, what it entails, things like that, especially with fiscal sponsorship, our service of fiscal sponsorship. So first, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about Fractured Atlas. We are a nonprofit artist service organization that provides business tools to artists, and we serve all types of artists. We work with artists who are dancers, filmmakers, musicians, theater makers, all of the above and more, and things that you might not also think would be an artist. We work with. So we offer a variety of programs and services that help artists strengthen the business side of their practice. Our 4 core programs are fiscal sponsorship. It helps artists raise charitable donations from individuals, corporate sponsors, and grantors. There is our insurance program, which helps artists minimize their own risk and liability. Artfully, which is our web-based software application that helps artists sell tickets, take donations, and track fans. And then there is Space Finder, which is our online marketplace that helps artists find performance and rehearsal space. We'll get into a little bit more about these programs a little bit towards the end so you can get a little taste of all the things we offer. Just so you know, I know you're probably feverishly writing down notes right now, this is being recorded. So once we are done in a couple of weeks, it will be available on our YouTube page, and we will send an email out with a link to the actual webinar so you can view it again. So don't feel like you have to take quick notes or anything like that. You can get back to this actual recording to view again if you missed anything. So next I'll get a little bit into more about our programs itself. So we service over 73,000 members in all of our services. We have 4,192 projects currently fundraising with us. We've raised about $153 million altogether in the lifetime of fiscal sponsorship, given about 17,000 policies for insurance, and service about 1 million plus artists with all of our programming. So again, with this program, with this webinar, we are going to go into kind of the basics of introduction to individual giving. So you'll see our welcome introductions. Next, we'll talk about the benefits of individual giving. We'll get into how do you prepare when you want to do an ask, the channels of outreach, how do you reach out, engaging donors, captivating our donors, and then as well as other Fractured Atlas services. As you know, this will be recorded, as I mentioned, so you don't have to take down crazy notes. And there will be a question section at the end. So if you have a burning question, feel free to type it in the Q&A box or in the chat box if you like. I will try to get to it while we're going through each slide, but if I don't get to it, do know that there will be a question and answer section at the end, so your questions will be answered then. Okay. And of course, we as Fractured Atlas are here to help. We know that fundraising can be overwhelming, especially for those who may have not done it before. This is their first time, or anyone who's trying to do something new. And we're here to give as much of our advice and tools and services as we can for all of our projects and all the services that we offer. So I'll go a little bit into who I am before we get started. My name is Aisha Jordan, as I mentioned. I'm a program associate at Fractured Atlas. I've been here for almost 3 years. And one of the unique things about me is that I also have 2 sponsored projects with Fractured Atlas. So before I even worked there, I was actually working as a fiscally sponsored project doing the same thing that you all are doing now. So I not only have some insight on how our tips and tools will work with our artists, but I also use them myself. So if you have any specific questions about how to use the program, how someone on the other side of things is doing it as well, I'm definitely here to help. So we'll get into a little bit about individual giving benefits before we get started into the nuts and bolts of how you work with individual donors. So we'll jump right into it. When we're talking about individual donors, it's important to see why we work so hard to get individuals on board with our work. So this is a breakdown of the funds raised through Fractured Atlas's fiscal sponsorship program. Now, as you can see, more than 50% of the funding we receive for the purposes of our fiscally sponsored projects come from individual donors, while less than 40% comes from foundations and less than 10% from other sources. So the current climate, historically, donations from individuals account for over 2/3 of all donations. This trend is also prevalent in major cultural institutions in the US, and it shows us that we should rely on individuals to fund the majority of our budgets. So grants versus individual giving. Now you might be thinking, what about grants? Aren't they usually in larger sums and aren't they more reliable because they come from institutions? While grants take up about 1/3 of our income, you can't really rely on them because they are competitive and may not come through year after year. So statistically, grants are the most competitive type of support that exists, and the amount of funding available can fluctuate from year to year. So they're competitive. You can wait anywhere from 6 to 18 months from a response, and then in that response, you might either get way less than you asked for, or you might get rejected. So the best way to create a sustainable funding model is to build a donor base made up of many individuals rather than a few grants that may or may not come in through the following year. And individuals give unrestricted funds. Plus, many foundations consider individual donors to be the bread and butter of your work, and they want to see that you have a strong base when reviewing your proposals. And stop me if I'm going too fast, if you want me to slow down or anything like that. I tend to talk a little quickly. So in our next section, we're going to talk about preparing. How do you prepare to do an ask for individuals? What kind of things you put together and what information you want to put out in the world in order to cultivate these donors. So number one, you want to tell a compelling story. So you want to know what the who, what, where, when, and hows and whys of your project really are. And you want your donors and those viewing your work to know exactly what that is too, to see exactly what they might be getting into. So telling a compelling story. So know the what. What is it? Be clear and concise about your artistic discipline. Is it dance, film, theater, performance, art, etc.? This part can be tough for artists as the whole point of our work is not to be put in a box, but think of it as opening the box for your donor. They may not know the subtle nuances of your art form, but to bring them in, tell them what kind of box you work around. In addition, what problem does your work address or seek to provide action for? These are important information for your donor to know when they want to jump in and help you out. So know the who. After you've established what you do, be clear about who you do your work for and who you do your work with. So who are the key players? Who make up the community? Be specific on the audiences that will actually be impacted, and examples of past impact is also key. So know the where. Where does your work take place? Let donors know where your activities will be conducted and exactly where you intend to make your impact and what locations you are invested in exposing your work to. As you get to know your donors, you may find that some donors are very interested in funding projects in a specific region, and you can cater to this when you're soliciting a donation. So tell the when. When will the project take place? Let your donors know the timeline of the project and what phase of the work their funds will be aiding. This is also a chance to highlight the urgency and significance of giving now and not at a later portion of the project. So what phase are you at in the project at this moment? And let them know how their funds will help you at this time and what's going to happen right after and how you're going to execute that in the future. So how? How do you create impact? What steps do you take in order to reach the goals you've set out and get the desired outcomes for your work? How does your process of creation, production, or execution hope to yield the impact needed? Sometimes this manifests as a rubric or a pedagogy or a specific method used, but just be clear and specific and concise so your donor may not know the intricacies of a certain method or style, and let them in on the secret. So next, why? Why do you do this work? Detail the significance of the impact. Now, this is very important in conveying the value of the work you do. Now, many people get scared of the word value because we tend to be pretty humble about our worth. And how do you put a value on art? Now, here's the chance to let your donor know the reason your work is so impactful and instill urgency and buy-in for the donor. Let them know by donating that they are making the same impact as well. So next, it's about kind of knowing your donor. Know your constituents and their interests. Pay close attention to the type of audiences you attract and the followers who flock to your work. Be sure to know their habits and specifics of what parts of their work that they may like the most. This gives you the beginning of how to engage them and even further into your work. Now, we suggest administering surveys at your shows or e-blasts to gauge the impact of your work on your participants. Fractured Atlas has a great service that helps you track all of this, of course, called Artfully. Now, Artfully helps you sell tickets, receive donations for sponsored projects and 501c3s, a nonprofit, and track all of this information. Now, we'll get into just how to utilize this once we get a little bit closer to towards the end. So many people want that magic easy button to get a list of all donors who will give to you, just because. And I'm sad to say this magic list does not exist. Like many large and small organizations, it takes hard work, perseverance, and networking to really build your list of donors. So the question is, how do we start that hard work, perseverance, and network? Who do we talk to? So we say start with a small group of close friends and family. Now, we know it's tough. We don't all have that rich auntie or wealthy best friend. But when you're building a community and a following, that $5, $10, $20 that friend gives actually lays the foundation for your project's continued success. So we say one of the best things to start out with is develop an advisory committee, one that can help you do all the tasks and all the things that you're looking to achieve. They can help you write thank you notes or make calls to donors, and have a group who can help that will allow you to keep connected with your donors and thank them for generosity in a timely manner. And a lot of time your advisory board can be filled with people who might know how to do things you might not know how to do. Maybe they know some people you don't know, or they might have access to funds or spaces or any ways that can grow your company. So starting with an advisory board is really key. I myself have one for my projects, and it really helps out when I'm looking for fundraising. They have great ideas and knowledge that, I can't bring to the table that they do for me, which is really great. So which brings us to our next subject. Once you have all the information you need for your project, you have it written down, it's clear, it's concise, you know exactly what you want to say and who you want to target. The question is, where do we do this? How do we get this information out now that we have assembled it? So one of the ways that's very effective is letter writing, and it can be the first step in a fundraising plan for individuals. Now, letters should emphasize the who, what, where, and how of your work that we just spoke about earlier, but be sure to do this in a condensed and concise way. So, number one, try not to use flowery language. You're looking to gain their support rather than fill them with the metaphors and jargon of your work. Now, I like to use the peanut butter and jelly sandwich explanation technique. Now, imagine you're telling people how to make a PB&J sandwich who've never heard of it. Tell them where you get the peanut butter and the jelly, what bread and where to get it, how do you spread the peanut butter, what utensils do you use, etc. Now, try not to explain the meaning of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because in the end, the result is to have a sandwich. So you want to use the I and you statements, but mostly the you. Remember, you're going to emphasize how this will benefit your donor. Using the word you will help to emphasize the fact so that your donors benefit from this is very clear. Now, base the appeal on benefits and not needs. So you don't want to highlight disparity. So make sure you speak less about your needs and more about the benefit to not only your donors, but also to your intended audience. Now, you're ultimately doing this work for someone or a group of people. So talk about the benefits that their donation will have for them and for the work itself. Now, give them a reason to send the money now. They need to know that you need the funds now and not in 6 months. Let them know that you need $20 by such and such a date in order to make this particular initiative successful. And make sure to be specific about what you're talking about. Anyone can give support just by patting you on the back and saying, I support you. But you want to be specific about requesting a donation so that your donors are aware of your intentions. Make it clear that your goal is not to raise funds. Ultimately, you're trying to make art that will serve a greater audience. Raising funds is just a means to an end that will help you achieve that goal. And feel free to use online resources to search for examples of amazing appeal letters. Now, e-blasts are another great way to get the word out. Now, MailChimp is a great e-blast service that connects to Fractured Atlas's platform artfully, and artfully can assist the engaging of your donors by keeping track of your correspondence, which we'll talk about in a minute. But MailChimp syncs with that, so you're able to send e-blasts a little bit better and see who you've sent emails to and things like that, and who has actually donated. It's great data. Just remember that when you are getting ready to put together a letter appeal or an e-blast or any kind of thing that you're soliciting donations, make sure that you send it to Fractured Atlas at support@fracturedatlas.org first, because all materials need to be approved before sending along to your donors or making it for public use. So as you prepare your asks and sending that out to the world, be sure to keep accurate and up-to-date front-facing content, such as websites, your donor landing page, and social media sites. This way, when donors look into your work, you can be sure they're getting the most up-to-date and accurate information. So, as you all may know, social media is another way to engage new and potential donors with your work. Studies have shown that 96% of millennials have joined a social network and that the fastest growing demographic in social media is people over 50. Considering the number of people using social media and the ease with which people can share information using certain platforms, it can be one of the most important tools you use in your fundraising. Now, social media can be especially helpful when running a crowdfunding campaign, as it is the best way to make your campaign go quote unquote viral. If you have a social media presence, your followers can help out by spreading the word about your work. So develop a consistent posting calendar and make sure to link your donor landing page with Fractured Atlas as well, and all approved by Fractured Atlas, of course. Which brings me to our next popular form of individual giving, which is crowdfunding. Now, there are many platforms available to hold a crowdfunding campaign on your own to fundraise. But if you're looking to give your donors a tax deduction with your gift, only one platform can do that for our sponsored projects with us. And that is, luckily, Fractured Atlas Platform Fundraising by Fractured Atlas. So when you are fiscally sponsored, this is the platform that you would be using, and all donations would be considered tax deductible to the extent permitted by the law for our fiscally sponsored projects. Again, you can hold a crowdfunding campaign with any of the previously shown platforms, but they would not be tax deductible and they would not come to Fractured Atlas. It would just be something you would do on your own and would go directly to you as the project. So crowdfunding campaigns are about crowdsourcing your art and getting the word out to as many people as possible to expand your reach and excite and motivate current and new donors about your work. So the big difference between crowdfunding and doing, let's say, an ongoing campaign, which people can donate to at any time with Fractured Atlas, you do have a regular general support page. But crowdfunding is best when you're fundraising for a specific activity or portion of your work. So for example, a production, a specific gallery exhibit, a new album, or a performance run. Now you can set a goal include images and videos as well as rewards for your donors. Now, many people think there are, random donors scouring the internet looking for a campaign to donate to. Unfortunately, this is not the case. 99% of the time, donors are close friends and families and acquaintances. But the work gets shared so often and there's so many people getting the word out that excites new donors to get involved. And crowdfunding is just one of those ways to get the word out about your work. Now, networking is the best way to gain new donors and reach new followers. So networking means ask your friends, family, and acquaintances to share your work, possibly put you in touch with someone they know who might be interested in getting involved. Now, networking is big. A lot of people think, oh God, I've already asked my friends, I've already asked my family, no one wants to give money anymore. But it's not so much about reaching out to the same people over and over again. It's about showing up to other functions and getting involved in circles you may not have been in before. So get business cards, ones with clear contact information. The key is getting people you don't know that your friends and family may know or fellow artists know to get interested in your work. Now, because I know we're not all millionaires and sometimes our friends aren't either, but 6 degrees of separation, you may get in touch with someone who has the cash to spare. So one of the important things is use their preferred method of correspondence. If a donor does not respond to emails, try social media, phone calls, or even snail mail letters, although that can get kind of expensive with postage. But then there might be the reverse. If they don't return your phone calls, try emailing them. Now, catering your asks helps your donors see how integral they are to your journey. Providing the courtesy to meet them on their plane will go a long way. Now, how else can you make getting the most out of your solicitations? Well, there are 3 major ways to maximize donations for your projects. First is monthly gifts are important for any fundraising campaign because they allow your donors to contribute a little bit at one time over a course of a long time, which builds up. So let's look at a typical donor profile comparing monthly donors. Not one time, or we can see how monthly donations really work. So once a donor clicks donate now, they have the option of giving just once or today and again every month. So this is a great gift. I actually have a recurring donation. It's about $25 a month. It's something like this, like $10 a month. You think it's small, but as it adds up, it covers a lot of these little expenses that you have constantly. Things like bank fees, or website maintenance, or website hosting, things like that. So I do encourage you to try to get these monthly donations, which is great for projects. And next is non-cash donations. Now, donations don't only need to be made in cash. You can often eliminate your budget items by asking for a non-cash or in-kind gift. This is especially important if your donor cannot offer funds but has equipment or other materials to contribute. This could be, if you're doing a film and you need food on set, you can get food donated. Just little things like that, or props or anything like that. But remember, only tangible items are considered tax deductible according to the IRS. So Fractals can process donations of tangible items and offer donors tax receipts for those donations. So another great way to maximize on your donations are matching gifts. So many companies will match an employee's donation to a charity. Now make sure your donors are aware that Fractals can accept these matching donations. The match will usually be at least a 1-to-1 match, but sometimes the company will even match the donation 2-to-1 or more. Have your donors check in with their HR or matching gift departments to see what protocol is necessary to submit for a matching gift. So here's a little bit about how it works. Generally, the process will start with your donors making a contribution. From there, they will need to report the donation to their employer. The employer will check with Fractured Atlas, and we over here on our end will confirm that the donation was actually received. Then, a few months later, we'll get a check from the employer matching that original contribution. It does take some time for matching gifts, so be aware it can be anywhere from 6 weeks to 4 months. It is all depends kind of on the company's process. So next in our agenda, we're going to go into engaging our donors. So now that we have the content, the materials, and the strategies, how do we engage our donors? Because making a donor base is easier said than done, of course. In this next section, we'll discuss positioning your project in a way that brings in interested followers and cultivates relationships. So first question is, what do donors want? They might care about the audience you're serving and want to help you bring your service to that audience. Perhaps they want to help in some way, but they can't give time, so they give money instead. Some might want status, and some might just want the tax deduction. The important thing to remember is, I know it sounds crazy, but soliciting donation, it's not about begging for money. It's about asking for donors to be in on your work and gaining resources for your art. So you want your donors to be a part of the journey. Donors want to become a part of your work, and they're in a sense connecting themselves as part of your journey. So even if their involvement is a monetary one, your solicitation is an invitation of sorts for them to be a part of the whole work. So to see that your work has value and impact, and in return, this means that they're providing that value and impact as well. So let them know that. Let them know that the value of your work and the impact of your work also extends to them when they become a part of this. So how do we engage our donors in a way that excites them about becoming a part of this work? Let them in on the work. Let your donors know exactly where their funds are going. Focus on their interests specifically. If a donor advocates for paying artists, make sure you let them know how you prioritize this in your work. And use the information and materials you have prepared to pinpoint where the donor fits within your work. And offer rewards to your donors in appreciation of their gift. Rewards can be shout-outs on social media, their name listed on your website, credit within the work such as programs and film credits, or goods such as tickets to performances, admission to classes, pieces of artwork, and more. Now, Fractured Atlas provides this with a very easy to use tool of giving levels on your donor landing page with this. This allows you for you to indicate a donation amount and attribute varying awards for each level. It also ensures Fractured Atlas can give the proper tax receipts to donors with the accurate, tax deductible amount included. Now, you can add this through your MyFiscal sponsorship page when logged into Fractured Atlas. Anytime you give a donation is incentivized with a gift, it does make it partially tax deductible, depending on the goods and service that the donor is receiving. For instance, if they're receiving just a social media shout out, doesn't really have a market value to which we can place onto it, so their gift would be considered fully tax deductible to the extent permitted by the law. If you are offering tickets, for instance, and the tickets are worth $10, then anything over the $10 mark that's given is tax deductible, and we need to make sure that that's issued in the tax receipt. But it's still a great way to get donors in on your work and appreciate them for their gifts. So very important, you want to guide your donors through the process as well. It's very important to be clear about what you want from your donors and how they can give that to you. So you should give them explicit instructions for how to donate. Make sure your instructions are easy to understand and clearly define each step your donors need to take to make the donation you've requested. You'll also want to clarify your donors that they'll contribute on Fractured Atlas's website, and that credit card statement and tax receipt will show Fractured Atlas as the donation recipient. And this is what your page looks like when you're making those donations. And it's always great to write a personalized thank you to each donor immediately upon receiving the gift. It'll add that personal touch that shows your donors how important they are to you. Which brings us to our next section, captivating donors. How do we keep these donors coming back? How do we make sure that, this is work that they want to be involved in over the years and tell more of their friends over the years as they meet and other um, contacts that they might come across? And here we'll talk a little bit about that and how you can do that in your constituents. So what does make a donor keep coming back? One, you want to keep in constant contact with your donors. Make good on your promises and rewards even if you don't reach your goals. This shows your donors how dedicated you are and lets them know that sometimes the road can be tough, but that you are resilient and you're determined to make the impacts you've set out to make. So a lot of people get kind of discouraged if a crowdfunding campaign doesn't do well. They want to extend it or they want to lower the goal, things like that that don't really show the donor exactly how well you're doing and doesn't keep that transparency and honesty with your donors. So you want to be honest, say, we didn't reach exactly what we want, but we're going to do it in this minimalist style, or reaching out to these other funders, or let them know there's still time to tell their friends to donate. This way it shows that your work is more important than just reaching a goal. So keep them up to date on your activities. Invite them and make sure they know what use their gift really went towards. And you can let them know that even if you didn't make the goal, as mentioned, that their money is going towards very good use to expanding and making the project continue. Survey your donors. Ask them what they think about the communications you've sent. Now, I suggest starting with friends and family, of course, asking both those who have donated and those who haven't what they think about your solicitation. What did they like? What didn't they like? What do you think you could have done differently? As you continue to expand your donor base, you should continue to survey your most faithful donors in order to continue refining the way you interact with them, and then expanding on how you can interact with new donors. Celebrate. Show your appreciation even when they're not giving you funds. Send holiday greetings or have a small, low, or no-cost event to bring everyone together. Meet up at a bar or an invitation to an open rehearsal. This really shows your donor that they've been integral to the process, and let them see that actual process. So make sure that if they are digitally inclined, that they are following you on social media. So make sure they've liked you or they're followers on your Instagram or your Snapchat or anything, Facebook, so that they continue to see what you're up to. And again, if you have that regular posting schedule, they'll get even more excited about your work. It's also great to send newsletters. That's the easiest and best way to keep in touch, especially if there's a regular time period. Your donors will know that, every 2 or 3 months they'll receive notification of what's been going on and how the work has been going or anything like that, letting them know that their money isn't just gone, but that they're still part of it and that the work is continuing. So in this next session, I'll go briefly into some of the other services that Fractured Atlases provide that can position your project for maintaining individual donors and for continued success. So as I mentioned earlier, there is our service of Artfully, which is a great way to keep track of your donors, and it works specifically with fiscally sponsored projects. So once you're fiscally sponsored, you can go to Artfully just as it is spelled above, artful.ly, and sign up your project up as an organization. Now there's no extra cost to using Artfully, and once you are connected, you can email us to set up a sponsored project kit to accept donations through Artfully and link your donor records to best organize and manage your donor correspondence, as well as patron records from your events. That's a great way to start understanding your audience, managing your segments, and organizing your communications. Now, Artfully is available to everyone on the web, but it does work greatly when you are fiscally sponsored, when you can get those donations. Or if you are your own nonprofit 501c3, you can also accept donations through Artfully as well. So this service syncs, like as I mentioned, specifically with fiscally sponsored projects, creating an individualized record for each donor. Now you can sell tickets to shows and events, take donations. The system then saves a record of when patrons have attended events and when they have donated to your work. This service can also link with MailChimp, as I mentioned earlier, allowing you to manage correspondence and keep up-to-date records for your supporters. So you can track your donors and other fans in the same place. Now, this is also a great service for nonprofit 501c3 organizations, as I mentioned. So this means if your project actually becomes a 501c3, you can continue using Artfully to receive donations. And because all records sync from your sponsored project, if you close your sponsorship with us, you can still access those donor records with Artfully. And it's a great platform for sponsored project and all arts organizations and projects. So Space Finder, this actually is one of my favorite services that we offer. Don't tell the rest of this is sponsorship. But Space Finder is an online marketplace that matches renters with venues that meet their unique needs. So for artists, the process of finding workspace can be very frustrating and inefficient. Now, meanwhile, venues have limited resources to spend finding new renters. Earned revenue is critical for creative venues, yet many rental spaces are tragically underutilized. Through Space Finder program, Fractalize is increasing visibility of rental options, helping artists find the space they need, and helping venues promote and rent their spaces. Now, there's over 5,000 spaces listed and 554,000 searches for space every year. There are also $800,000+ annual rental referrals to participating creative venues. The reason I say I love it the best is because myself, as a person who creates content and performance work and films, it is so hard to find space anywhere, especially in New York City. So when you have one place where you can search and find, you can search in so many different ways, the size of space you need for performance, for a photo shoot, for installation. You can search so many different categories to get you the thing you need in your price range. So it's just a phenomenal service. So thanks to the combined purchasing power of Fractured Atlas community and our members have access to high quality coverage for much lower rates than would otherwise be possible. So insurance, more importantly, with one foot in the arts and the other in the world of insurance, we've worked with some of the world's leading insurance companies to design a number of proprietary insurance programs that are specifically tailored to meet your specific needs. Now, we've even made the process quick and painless as possible on our online page. And once you go there, you can get instant quotes for certain things that you might be wanting to get insured for. And then you can also purchase those. You do have to be a member of Fractalize at the community level at least to receive a quote. Once you get that quote and you want to purchase that insurance, you do have to be a member at the dues paying level to receive the insurance and claims and anything like that. But it is a great resource for artists who are trying to get insurance for companies that don't quite understand what artists do. So international artist visas. Now, getting a visa to work as an artist in the United States is a time-consuming and frustrating process. Fractured Atlas is considered a peer group and offers review for your O and P visa applications and provide a letter of consultation / no obligation for the application. Now, whether you're submitting an immigration attorney or you're an employer, petitioner, or a visiting artist or group of artists, we can provide this service for a fee of $200. Now, we can help make this process quick, easy, inexpensive, and efficient. Relevant visa application documents can be submitted online through our website. Please note, you do need to be a member at the free community level in order to take advantage of this service. And just for clarity, it is for international artists who want to do work in the United States. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to help people go from the United States to other countries. It's more about bringing in amazing new artists into the United States. So that kind of sums up all of our services, and I hope it was a good introduction to individual donors. We will take some time now for questions, so feel free to type those in. Just going to take a minute, let some questions come in, and drink some water. All right, great. We do have one question. Please explain the approval needed. Sounds like everything you do needs approval. What social media posts need approval? And are there forms for all these approvals? That's a great question. We do require approval for many of the things that are mentioning Fractured Atlas or tax deductibility or anything like that. I know it sounds like you'd have to be sending us a letter every 10 seconds like, Hi, David. We want to ask you, hi, Susan. We don't ask you to send every single letter. We can approve a letter that says like dear blank. As long as the contents of that letter stays the same, we can approve that one letter that you'd be sending out in, let's say, in a mass email, or if you'd be, just changing the name to cater it to a specific donor. We understand that. As long as as long as the major parts of the letter don't change, it's approved for use. And that's the same for e-blasts and things like that. For social media posts, which is similar, just send us the text in an email to support@fracturedatlas.org. We'll look over that text, see that it works, and then you can go ahead and use it in all of your posts. For Facebook and things like that, and maybe even Instagram if they have the word count, we kind of let Twitter slide because they have a specific character limit. But if you have the required standard text on your Facebook page or the front-facing page, that's really great. So donors will always see in your About section that you're fiscally sponsored in that language that goes there, which you can find on your My Fiscal Sponsorship page. Yeah, and there's not specific forms for approval. It's just anytime you're mentioning fracture as or tax deductibility, just send it our way in an email just to be sure, before you send that out. All right, we have a question about international artist visas. About bringing a group and if the fee is $200. I believe when there's a group, it's a different type of visa. It's not just the original O1B visa when it's a group. So you might want to check on what different types of visas, because it's just $200 per application. So if you're applying for every single individual, yes, it would be $200 per individual. But I would look up the different types of visa applications that there are, because it does allow groups, which would be one application and one fee. But again, you might want to do a little bit more research to be sure which one that you should be submitting. Do you have examples of fractionalized projects that you think have used giving levels or campaigns particularly well? Oh, that is a great question. We definitely do. I don't have ones off the top of my head at the moment. We have a lot of projects that are kind of fundraising at the time. But I can say that for me and other projects I've seen, the ones that provide rewards that are the most acknowledging and the least work for you as the project are probably the best. So if there's something that's fairly easy to do, which is, a social media shout out or naming someone as an executive producer in your film or something like that, it really kind of gets people excited about the work, and at the same time doesn't mean that, you're somewhere trying to make a bunch of t-shirts for someone, even though, t-shirts isn't your thing. Just make sure it's always something that's connected to the work and it's something that you do normally, so you're not overextending yourself in those giving levels. But yeah, feel free to send us an email at support@fracturedatlas.org if you want some specific examples of projects, and I can send those your way. And if anyone does want to peruse the crowdfunding platform, it's fundraising.fracturedatlas.org. And there you can see some of our active projects that are out there right now fundraising, and kind of get some cues from them as well. Is Artfully for every small organizations in lieu of buying / using Razor's Edge type of software? I wouldn't say yes and no. It is for smaller organizations to be able to use these services without kind of buying or spending a lot of money on a more expensive service. But we are different. We do different things. We do try to provide as much of the service as we can for tracking your patrons and events. But again, you might want to see what works best for your use. But in a sense, yeah, it would be kind of that Razor's Edge type of thing where you're able to track donors and do more with the information that you might not be able to track on your own. To apply for grants, I have to raise $1,000 of contributed revenue. Do donations from family count as contributed revenue? That is a great question. So we do have a grant eligibility requirement with Fractured Atlas where you have to have raised $1,000 before seeking grant funding. This is in place because funders actually reached out to us personally saying that they would like to see our project have a donor base before actually submitting proposals to them. So we put this requirement in place kind of so that you can have a more competitive chance when applying with us. So that 1,000, it can't really come from family or from yourself. It should come from somewhere outside. If you do have that donation from a family member, let's say they have like a family fund or something like that they've given to you, or then we're not going to not accept that. But yeah, you should just send us, if you've received $1,000 before even becoming fiscally sponsored, just send us proof of that and we'll let you know if it's something you can accept or if it's something that we wouldn't be able to accept. But technically you can't just say, oh, I need $1,000 so I can apply for grants. You can't just like ask your aunt to give you $1,000, because even then the funders will see like, hey, you have this one donor that happens to be your aunt, and you might not have the dedicated donor base that they're looking at. Okay, what is the deal with accepting donations from outside the US? Are donations, say, from Canada, also tax deductible for them? That is a wonderful question. Technically, no. We can accept donations from outside the US, of course. Once it's donated, it is exchanged into USD, into US dollars. But issuing a tax receipt, the tax receipt gets issued automatically, but because they don't pay taxes in the United States, it wouldn't do much use for them. So it only allows for a tax deduction for US-based, people's organizations. We have had in the past some projects who were receiving grants from, let's say, a funder in the UK or in Canada, and they needed to be a 501c3 or they needed to be nonprofit in order to accept it, and we've accepted on their behalf. But in those cases, the tax deduction is not really important. It's more about who they're allowed to give their money to. So it's kind of up to you if you want the money to come into Fractured Atlas or if you want it to go directly to you, if this is something like an individual donor who can just give you the money. Things to think about in that is that you would be responsible for that money right away. Once funds are donated to Fractured Atlas for the purposes of your project, they are in our possession and you're not responsible for them until they are released to you. So let's say you receive a $1,000 donation in December, but you don't use it until January or March. Now you have to write off on your taxes that you received $1,000, but you didn't use it on anything. So it just looks like income with no expenses. That can be kind of tough for people. So coming into Fractured Atlas allows you to leave that money there. You're not responsible for it until you actually need to use it, and then only then would you need to report it on your taxes. So all those things kind of go into play. If the donor gives it to you directly, our 7% isn't taken out, things like that. But again, yes, it's not considered tax deductible for them if they don't pay US taxes. So I hope that answered that. Yeah, if we have any more questions, feel free to type them in. Otherwise, if you have kind of specific questions about your work or about how to use your tool specifically for what you're doing, or you have kind of a more complicated question, feel free to email us at support@fracturedatlas.org, and we will get back to you within a business day or two with the answer to those questions. And again, if anyone wants to kind of peruse our crowdfunding, it's fundraising.fracturedatlas.org, and you can see kind of what's going on that page as well. Yeah, and feel free to send us any questions if you want to see more specific instances from different projects, or if you want to know more about how I kind of operate my project, feel free to email. You can put my name in the subject line. It's AISHA. Yeah, so this is our contact information. Anytime you have a question, just send to support@fracturedatlas.org. This is our phone number. We are best reached by email because we do service over 4,000 projects. It actually comes up easier and more quickly for us to answer through email, as phones get kind of tough to answer when there's so many projects getting in touch. But feel free to give us a call, leave us a voicemail, and we will get back. And then before we go, here is a list of some other webinars, other webinars that we offer to our fiscally sponsored projects and to anyone, actually. They are open to the public. If you go on to fractureatlas.org, you can check upcoming info sessions, and there you can kind of sign up for any other webinars we have coming up. So yeah, again, if you have any other questions, feel free to send us an email, give us a call, and we'll get back to you. Oh, we have one more question. Is there an HTML widget for websites for Fracture Atlas? Oh, that is a great question. At this time, for fundraising with us as a fiscally sponsored project, we don't have a specific widget. If you're signed up with Artfully, there is a widget you can use on your site and whatnot to accept donations through Artfully. So you can go ahead and take a look on artful.ly a little bit more about how to install that widget and what it entails. But if you are fiscally sponsored or you're a nonprofit with 501c3 status, you can install that widget. If you are just an individual just trying to sell tickets to your events, but you're not fiscally sponsored and you don't have 501c3 status, you wouldn't be able to use that widget for obvious reasons. But yes, you can install a widget using Artfully to get donations. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I hope it gave you just a little bit of insight into individual donors and kind of Fractured Atlas and our services. And please do take a look at some of our other webinars to take advantage of that. You know, give us a call, email us, any of those things. Thank you so much for coming. Great. You're welcome. Thanks for all the thanks in the chat box. I'm glad it was helpful. And again, look out in a couple weeks for an email with a link to this so you can watch it again if you need to. Another edition of this is available now. If you want to go back and listen right away, I believe you can take a look at one of our older sessions, same information, just, you know, from a little while ago. Feel free to do that and look out for an email on how to view this again. All right. Have a great night.